I'm Brian Vance, Sportbike.com, and today we're going to break down the LighTech Version R rear set install on our 2018 Kawasaki Ninja 400 STG project bike. Okay, LighTech rear sets. We already installed the set of the Version R on the 2018 Suzuki GSX-R 1000R. I loved them. I loved riding them. I love the way they look on the bike. They're gorgeous, precision, fit, finish, feel. Really more the same here for the Ninja 400. They come at a cost, for sure. You know, this is, at this point, I believe it's the most expensive pair of rear sets that we offer for the Ninja 400. Before we go a lot further, I want to remind everyone, the Version R is not the only kit LighTech offers, okay? They have their standard kit, which is still badass, and it's basically identical to this, minus some bells and whistles. You're not going to get the cool two-tone carbon heel guard, right? The standard version that's right around, I think, for the Ninja, about the $400 price point. You're not going to get folding foot pegs, you're going to get fixed foot pegs. But the quality of machining, quality design, all those things at the end of the day are the same. So I would say that, you know, that, considering it's in the same wheelhouse, allows you to put a set of precision rear sets on your Ninja 400 if you want to do it. Some people are probably thinking, and I've seen this, and I might have even thought this before, why would somebody put all that money into one of these entry-level bikes? This November, I learned why, because I took Max's bike out and I rode it for the first time ever on the track, right? He wasn't there and I wanted to try and beat his lap time. Long story, but I didn't do it. I have to give it to the kid. It was 40-some degrees, maybe that was why. Or maybe he's just better than me. It's possible. But what I do know is I had a ton of fun riding that bike. His bike is really well set up. We've got K-Tech suspension, front and back, proper geometry, right? All the race go-fast parts the bike needs to be a good track bike. And I gotta tell you, riding that thing out there was so much fun. You could put it on any line you wanted to. The tires last forever. I used the same tires that Max had ridden on for like half of the season, and he was riding the bike pretty fast, and they were still more than good enough for me to go out there and tool around on the bike and have a blast. So all that said, you look at these lightweights like the Ninja 400, right? You've got a super affordable motorcycle that's easy on tires. And if you're going to do fast lap times on it, there's only one way to get there. You actually have to ride the bike right. You can't make up for mistakes with the throttle exiting the corner. You have to use proper entry, proper mid-corner, proper exit, proper lines, all those things, and string it together through every corner on the track if you want to get to a really good lap time. And that, I think, just makes it more interesting. And it allows you to do it a whole hell of a lot cheaper. Okay, and I think that's the real appeal to this. And plus, there's so much fun to ride. So back to the rear sets. Two options. We got the Version R that you see here, and this is full of bling. We're talking, right? Folding toe pieces, folding toe foot pegs, you know, dual colored carbon heel guard, precision machining, top quality anodized. This is a beautiful part. If you want to see what it takes to install it on the Ninja, stay tuned. We're going to show you every step of the way, and we'll break down all the features and benefits. One of the big ones is LighTech includes pieces that allow you to retain your rear brake light switch. If you're a street rider, it's nice to be able to have that on there. They designed the kit in such a way, if you're a racer, well, there's no need. You don't bolt those brackets on, you just leave it off as you get rid of the switch, and you're just bare bones, just foot controls with brakes. In terms of shifting, this kit works with either standard or GP shift. I always like to begin on the brake side. First thing I'll do is brake the master cylinder. Bolts loose. You want to do that before you actually take the rear set body off the frame, because those typically have a reasonable amount of torque to them. So start there. Save all your OE hardware. Save your OE rear sets too, especially if you're going to do some track days and such. If you happen to have a tip over at the track and you damage the replacement rear sets, you have the OEs in your spare kit. Get yourself back on track real quick and you don't miss any riding time. Start with that. From here, we can go ahead and take the actual footrest itself now off the bike, and then we'll have to undo the brake pedal pivot. This cotter pin can typically be reused multiple times. So you want to spread it apart If you happen to damage it, don't worry, these are readily accessible. You can go to Home Depot, a hardware store, all the above, and find what you're looking for in a pinch. You can also jump in here with a piece of safety wire if you had to. Okay, slide that out. We're going to go ahead and keep that. You can push that pin out, like so. Now the brake master will hang freely. All that's holding it to the motorcycle now is the actual brake light switch itself. Slide that spring off. This is what actuates the brake light. When you step on the brake pedal, pull down. When you pull down, it closes the connection, turns the brake light on. So go ahead and disconnect that. And now, to remove it from the footrest, all you have to do is push these little release tabs in. They're all the way around that brake light switch. And that'll allow you to slide it right through, like so. Okay, let's dive right in. We'll start with the install of the LighTech version R rear sets on the brake side of our Ninja 400. LighTech has designed brackets that allow you to retain that OE rear brake light switch, okay? You can use them if you're gonna ride the bike on the street. They will be necessary. You can see they've used some pretty heavy gauge stainless here, right? So they'll stand up over a long period of time. They're not flexible, not gonna bend. It's gonna work great. If you're gonna use this for a racing application, you would not need to put these on here. There's no reason whatsoever to do that. So I like, just like with their levers, they built that flexibility into the rear set kit. Okay, when I mount these brackets to the rear set, I'm gonna use just a little bit of blue thread locker. Anytime you're assembling it, especially for street use, you wanna go the extra mile to help ensure that fasteners are not gonna work their way loose. When it's a race bike, there's a little more service involved, service intervals. You're going to take things apart, put them back together, inspect more often. Street bike, you know, it's almost more like a car. You're going to want to get on it and ride it and use it. And just helps to just go the extra mile, especially on a street install. So we'll bolt that bracket on like so. It's a tiny little fastener. You don't need a ton of torque. And then we have the bracket that's going to hold the actual switch itself. That mounts up towards the top of the footrest bracket. Like so. Noticed over the past 2 seasons, we've seen more and more instances where aftermarket parts manufacturers with rear sets have built in that rear brake light switch functionality right into the rear set kit. I think that's good because more and more riders are replacing the OE rear sets, even for street riding. It's important that if you're gonna ride it on the street, you do have the functionality of that rear brake light. Once we have that installed, we're ready to mount up the footrest bracket to the bike, okay? One little step we're gonna take here. This rod slides through the rear brake master clevis. Just a thin layer of grease here. Before we slip it in. Now the brake light switch. Push the spring through the cutout there. Slide it through. You can still get to this and adjust it once you have it mounted up to the motorcycle. So what you want to do here is you want to make sure that you don't have a tremendous amount of slop in the spring. I've already adjusted this one and I know the light works. So take that step right now and just get it close and you can fine tune it once you have everything mounted to the motorcycle. Now for the brake master. Let's go ahead and slide that pin through like so. I'm going to rotate it so that I have access to the other side, allowing me to put the snap ring that LighTech uses. This is a unique design here for the rear brake master. I've never seen anyone do it the way LighTech does. You want to make sure by rotating that snap ring that you've got it fully engaged. Okay, now let's go ahead and get the footrest itself mounted to the motorcycle. If you're going to use a torque wrench, these are bolts that you would want to torque. You're going to reuse your OEM fasteners. I will use a little blue thread locker here. Just get that started, don't tighten it up until you have both bolts in there and you have them both seated. I didn't put any real torque to it there, I just seated it. Now I've got them both flush. From here we'll go ahead and torque it. This is a 6mm T-handle. While I have the 6mm T-handle in my hand, I want to double check. This came installed, but it never hurts to just double check the torque. Clearly that is tightened and torqued from the factory. Next up, we need to mount the brake master to the footrest bracket. I'm going to use a little blue thread locker here. These are 5mm. Just like we showed you on the bolts that mount the footrest bracket to the frame, you want to go ahead and get them both started, run them down till they're flush with no real torque, and then torque them completely after you've done that. Just get it to seat. Once they're both flush, go ahead and torque them. If you want to use a torque wrench, these would be appropriate to torque as well. Okay, now before you go any farther, now would be a great time to make sure that you've got a good adjustment on that rear brake light switch. Make sure that's seated in there. Just key it up. Looks great. Adjusting it is very self-explanatory. You just simply rotate that nut on the body of the brake light switch itself. It kind of changes the length. Super simple. It's really obvious when you have it in your hands. This one's good to go. I actually already did it. Now, you need to put the heel guard on the bike. Look at this. I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous. How many people are going to put the Version R rear sets on the Ninja 400? It's a more affordable bike. That's really hard to say. I mean, if you have the budget for it and you're building a lightweight, and what we're starting to see right now is that riding these lightweights on the track it's badass, man. It is a ton of fun. This is actually going to be one of my 2 race bikes for 2019 after riding Max's R3 on the track at Barber in the fall. It's the first time I'd ridden a lightweight on the track, and I had so much fun with that bike, which is of course properly set up, that I decided I'm going to take this Ninja, I'm going to build the hell out of it, and I'm going to use it to whoop Max's butt out there while I still can. Well, I hope I still can. I'm not sure that I can. Point being, these lightweights are just a ton of fun on the track. So I don't think it's a big stretch to assume, you know, if you get people that the budget to modify the bike is a little more wide open, if you can afford the best rear sets that are out there, why not put them on the bike, right? A little bit of blue thread locker there. You don't want to lose that kick-ass carbon heel guard, that's for sure. And now we have the foot peg itself. These are available depending on which LighTech rear set kit you get. They have fixed foot pegs or folding foot pegs. This rear set kit comes down to a much more average price of right around $400 if you have the fixed foot pegs and not the Version R, but the standard version. The majority of the kit is the same with the standard version. It's important to note that. You just don't get some of the kick-ass carbon and the accents, things like that, but the nuts and the bolts of the kit are very, very similar. I'm not sure where I'm going to end up with my final adjustment, but we're going to start off all the way back and all the way up. This is a fastener. I would probably put some thread locker on once I get everything dialed in, but I won't do it before I have the opportunity to ride the bike and make sure that I'm happy with the position. That's a tapered seat fastener, so you have a lot of surface area once you torque this. Very unlikely that it's going to come loose. Lots of adjustment here. You have 2 rows that you're able to choose from, and you have multiple positions on each row, front or back, right? So tremendous adjustment, very basic design with this. That folding, super cool. Now the toe piece, you're able to adjust the distance from the foot peg to the toe piece for the brake lever. Really simple to do. It's got a 4mm T-handle. The lock nut, and they use a nylock nut on the other side, is actually captured in a channel. So moving this is really that simple. And that's a great way if you want to make fine adjustments to the length of that brake lever. You're talking 1 fastener, and that's a tapered seat fastener with a lock nut. Torque that down. Folding tip, folding peg. And one thing I noticed with the LighTech Rearsets is the precision behind them. You even feel that, and I remember this on my Suzuki, the very minor amount of play in that brake lever. Most Rearset kits with the rear brake lever, they reuse the stock clevis and the pin, right? And there's just honestly more play than there is with this. This is really tight, very precise. You can see that they installed real nice. Now let's move on to the shift side. I'm going to start by loosening up the shift rod right here. Okay, we're going to reuse this part of the stock shift rod because it is actually fixed right to that shift knuckle. You see that is permanent right there, and it connects down here. With this kit, you're able to do both standard or GP shift. For this install, because I'm going to be riding this motorcycle at the track now this upcoming weekend, I'm going to go GP shift. That's my pattern of preference, so that's what we're going to do. Loosen up the 2 bolts here at the footrest. Like so. See if we're able to just kind of rotate this off. Sometimes you can, other times you can't. Depends on clearance, but it looks like we'll be able to do that. Now we're on to the shift side. This kit is able to function in either reverse or standard shift. I'm going to go ahead and set it up right now in reverse shift. You're going to reuse the OEM shift knuckle. The Heim joint is fixed on the shift knuckle up here from the factory. You're also going to reuse the OE shift rod with the LighTech kit. First step with this is going to be mounting the footrest bracket to the frame of the motorcycle. Like we showed you on the other side, I'm going to use a little bit of blue thread locker on each of the bolts. Six mil T-handle is what I'm using here. These are the OEM fasteners, just like we did on the brake side. Get them both seated, and then you can go ahead and apply some torque. Next up, we will install that carbon heel guard. I think as the seasons wear on, you're going to see more and more, and I'm not talking just kids out there on these lightweights, but I think more and more grown-ups, if you will, right? If we ever actually grow up, but out there on track with these, because man, the bike is just so much fun to ride. You set that thing up right, you set this bike up correctly, and I know with that R3, you can put that bike on any line you want to. It really doesn't have enough power to get yourself in any trouble, and it forces you to ride the bike correctly. I think anybody can, no matter how long you've been riding, use a refresher like that, where you go out there and you can't pick your lap time back up on the throttle. You actually have to ride correctly. I know I definitely need a refresher course, I'll say that. A lot of years riding, you know, bigger bikes now, where if you make a little mistake, you just make up for it with the throttle. Okay, now we'll put the foot peg in the same spot that we did on the other side. I just went all the way up and all the way back. I don't know if that's going to be the final resting spot or not, but that's where we're going to start. Ground clearance on these bikes is definitely from the factory not where it needs to be for track riding. Okay, torque there, double check everything. Now it comes with one heim joint. We have a bolt and we have a locking nut, reusing the OE shift rod. If you're going to use standard shift, you will have the heim joint located in the rearwardmost hole. If you're going to use GP shift or reverse shift, you will use the forwardmost hole. One of the most important things is the angle between the shift rod and the knuckle, and also the angle between the shift pedal and the shift rod, are as close to 90 degrees as you can possibly get. That just produces the smoothest possible shifting, okay? So with this bike, I'm going to start off. I've already mocked this up. This kit's actually already been installed on the bike, just kind of sort out any booby traps, any irregularities before we really get going. And I found that in GP shift, if you're going to use this hole, it is best to use the bolt, run the bolt from the inside out. It gives you more clearance back here by that bracket. And when going into first gear with GP shift, you're going to need that. Okay, so I would suggest doing what I just did here. If you're going to run it in standard shift, this isn't anything you need to be concerned about. You can install it with the nut on the back side. Aesthetically, it does, I would say, look a little bit better with the nut on the back side. But what I'm most focused on is going to be functionality, performance. So I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit for smoother shifting. Okay, now once I have that bolted up, I'm going to go ahead and seat both the jam nuts. Let's see which direction. Okay. Install the shift rod like this. It's going to get it lined up, a little tension on it. And trying to get them to both start at the same time. Like so. That looks like a pretty reasonable spot to start with. If you look at the angles look good. I come up just a little bit. Right about there. And this is something, you know, once you get the boots on that you're going to ride in, you get on the bike, right? Especially after you've ridden it a couple of times, you're going to make fine adjustments for sure. It's not very often you put it in a spot initially and then it just stays there forever. You know, you really need to be out there riding in the footwear that you would normally ride the bike in order to determine whether or not you have the right spot. Something else that's really critical for smooth, accurate shifting is the relationship of the heim joints to one another. You want them riding on the same plane. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to roll this protective boot back. And there's a couple of different ways. I could leave this one loose and start with the other one. But I'm going to torque this one first. And I'm just using this wrench to hold it, so I'm not putting a ton of pressure inside the ball and socket of that heim joint to mar it up. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and push the protective boot over. Okay, now we can get the other jam nut into position. It's definitely going to be a lot tighter back here now. See if I can get the backup wrench in here. All right, and that's definitely not going to fit. And even getting the wrench now on that hind joint here, it's just not going to happen. So I'll go ahead and take this off. So I can have access to the jam nut and the hind joint. Slide that boot back one more time. Try and get them on the same plane. And I'll explain that a little bit more once I get this all put together. See that they're definitely on the same plane. Slide the boot back over. The tolerance is just so tight in here that clearly, making some of those finite adjustments, you might have to do a little disassembly. Really not a big deal, because once it's set, it's set. You don't typically have to revisit it. Go ahead and torque this back down. Like so. And now, notice how I've got a hold of the shift rod. I'm just rotating it back and forth. And the reason you want them to be on the same plane is if when you tighten these jam nuts down, if you have the hind joints twisted so they're opposing each other, okay, so they're not able to float like that, it's going to cause some binding in here, and it's going to create a situation where the shifting is just not accurate and smooth. So really important, number one, that everything's tight. Your 90-degree relationship here between the shift rod and the knuckle, and then of course between the pedal and the shift rod, right? The arm and the shift rod is as close to 90 as possible. And that does feel really precise. There's a little bit of play, but any play that there is up here in that OEM shift knuckle. It's pretty common on most OEM parts, right? Shift knuckle parts, just a little bit of play. I even feel that on my Suzuki. And the shift shaft itself will have a little bit of movement, but the parts themselves are very tight and precise. Like we showed you on the other side, there's an adjustable folding tip, so you're able to dial in. And once again, you really need to be wearing the boots or footwear you're going to ride the bike with. You're able to slide this back if you want to shorten it. Like so. Now it's even with the lever. Double check all your work. Now you're ready for the road test. Talked about this quite a bit. Anytime you replace controls on your motorcycle, foot controls, hand controls, it's essential everything is operating correctly. Double check, triple check your work, and then take it for a short test drive. If you're at the racetrack and you just built your race bike, at first practice or first session, go out and just do a couple laps. Come on back in, get the bike back on the stands, and just go over it. Just start touching things, the things that you just serviced, to make sure that everything is tight. Same thing with a street ride. Take a short little ride, and maybe you stop at a destination, just start touching everything, make sure it looks great, feels great. End of the day, things happen, people make mistakes. You don't want that to create an accident for you, so a little extra time spent will help avoid that. End of the day, what do I think of this rear set kit on this bike? It's impressive. It's as impressive as the set I installed on my Suzuki. I'm eager to get a chance to get out and ride in these. The precision feel, the folding pegs, It's hard to argue. I mean, this carbon is just absolutely gorgeous. The red accents with the version R, really dig it. I can't say enough good things about it. When it comes to rear sets, you know, the LighTech, they're the most expensive that we offer. There's no doubt about it. There's reasons for it. You can see it in the quality, the machining, the quality, the anodizing, the finish, the carbon, all those things. And then realistically too, just that precision when you have it on the bike. It's a cut above, but it's something that you pay for that cut above. There's no question. They're not giving it to you for free, not at all. Do I feel that they're worth the money? I do. If you can afford the version R and you want to put them on your Ninja, go for it. But remember, you still have that other, the base model kit, which is basically the same kit, minus some of the bling, right? That's available at a much more affordable price. I would definitely give those a look. Those are right around that $400 price point, which slots them in right there with everybody else. I'm Brian Van, Sportbike Track Gear. This is a LighTech version R rear set install on our 2018 Kawasaki Ninja 400 project bike. I'm gonna use this to kick Max's butt. I can't wait. K-Tech suspension. I'm coming for you, buddy.